Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I hope the thumbnail was clear. This is not a review. This is an opinion piece. I get one of two variants of questions. Which one is better? Which one should I get? About 3 to 10 times a day when it comes to these machines that have all recently launched for the most part. And we're going to answer that question. So if you are one of those people that are looking for the answer to which one is better, which one should I get, without knowing anything about you, I would just say the Mobula 7. It's my favorite. None of these are perfect. They all have faults of one thing or another. But for me, that's my choice, the Mobula 7. Recently, I told someone that, and they said, but it's sold out everywhere. Well, I can't control that, but what I am telling you is this one is the best for me. For my spaces, where I'm at in my FPV journey, this is the one I would buy every day of the week and twice on Sunday. I believe I said that in the last video. Hopefully I'm not wasting anyone's time who's seeing all the review videos. I'm not going to go into any details about this, so if you want details about each individual, I would encourage you to seek out the reviews that I have on each one of these machines. The only one, I think, no, the Snapper 7, it has a review on it as well, but originally it came with aluminum hoops and a carbon fiber base plate, so that's the only one that is different as you see it in front of you. Of course, we have some mods in the Beta FPV products. So this one is the best, but there is some qualifiers, and that's mainly what I'm here to do, is to try to give you some additional information so that you can make the best purchase decision for you. We're going to work from left to right, from 1S to 2S. So when it comes to really small spaces, going slower is going to be a benefit. You won't spend so much time banging off everything, and you'll spend much more time having fun. And that's where these little 1S guys over here on the far left, the UR65, which is this one here, and this is the US65. It also comes in a UK 65. And really the only differences outside of how it looks is the KV of motors. Everything else is pretty much the same. If you do choose to get this one, I would encourage you to either pick up an extra frame and maybe even go back to this one. I'm having reports that this one is more fragile than that one, so something to consider there. So if you have a real small space that you plan to fly in, indoor or outdoor really, I would suggest going with one of these. They perform really well, and you can actually fly them quite fast if you choose to, but they're more conducive to flying in smaller spaces because the adjustable camera angle, the very, very lightweight, and just by nature the reduced speed of those two machines. And the canopies have these little inserts here into the quad to where you can adjust your camera angle. Push that down, make it a little bit more level. That will naturally slow you down. So if you have a small room, say you have a 10 by 10 room or something of that nature, this would be what I would think you would probably push towards. But if you're a more skilled pilot, you might want to go somewhere else. But that's kind of my thoughts on those and where they belong right now. Small spaces or people who are just learning to fly, and or both of those things. At this point, if you have a Snapper 7, I hope you're happy with it, but I can't recommend you really buying it just because there are better products on both sides of it than it currently is. So let's just go ahead and take that one out. So continuing with 1S, the Tiny Hawk. The Tiny Hawk is the best performer when it comes to these 1S micros. Let me get in frame here. The outright performance of the Tiny Hawk is quite surprising. They've done a lot of engineering on this, so of course it also has its own faults, but it's, I think, a pretty well designed. I think its biggest drawback probably is the lack of turtle mode working on it, so it's something you need to be aware of. There's additional details you can find in the review video. So I think if you've got one of these and you want to move on up, the Tiny Hawk should be one you consider. Again, it's not going to fly as fast as the 2S versions. It might be close to the 65. That's a little hard for me to say, but again, I think you probably skip the 65 if you're looking at this one or 2S. So the Tiny Hawk's going to require a little bit more space and probably a little bit more pilot skill. If the space gets smaller and smaller, more and more skill on flying is going to be needed. Now for the 2S ones, these here, for me it really comes down to the fact that the Mobula can fly on 1S or 2S. Jason from Happy Model posted that these will now ship with a jumper, so you can just plug the jumper in. You can plug in your 1S battery here. You can either use those two single sticks, or you can use one 450. I think even 500s fit down in there. And you can fly at a more modest pace. 1S will naturally slow you down, and then when you're ready for it, you can go 2S, where you can't do that with either one of the Beta FPV products. The Beta FPV products also come stock with some pretty heavy camera angle that doesn't make it real conducive for new people to fly them. It also makes it a little bit more outdoor forced flying, unless you have a real large space. manage it in my house, but I don't think for a minute that everybody has a house like mine. I understand that. I'm not a young man. I'm I'm in my mid to late 40s, so that's my stage in life. So I can't really suggest anybody who's new or not looking at these already that you get started with these. It's going to create some challenges, and you have to kind of look to make mods right out of the gate. But if you're a racer, I think you would go with the 75, because I do think it is the fastest of this group. The straight out, all out speed, it's got more low end torque than everything else does. This one is going to be the fastest. Of course, you may vary depending upon your race course. If it's smaller and tighter, you may want to go with something like this or even the Tiny Hawk. But if it's a larger course, maybe in a warehouse or factory, you might want something like that. Of course, the Beta FPV products, I think their frames are more robust because their frames are the only ones I haven't broken. So if that's a high consideration for you, you may want to look at those products despite some of their shortcomings as well. And while I'm mentioning shortcomings, I should say we're at a pretty lucky time when it comes to brushless whoops. I've been flying brushless whoops for a year and a half, maybe a little bit longer than that. You can look. I've got a playlist. I think there's 25 videos in there. It might only be 23 different machines of brushless whoops. And I started out flying 1103 2-inch props in the house, like the Hoverbot Nano and the Q58. We had a lot of 3D printed stuff, so I've been flying in the house quite a bit, actually. And I will say that if you get flight time in your house, that you're probably going to find when it warms back up and you go back outside that you have newfound confidence and maybe a newfound skill set as well, because it is very challenging to fly indoors because it's very unforgiving. It's a little bit like my outdoor space in that if you get into trouble, you can't hammer the throttle because you're going to bounce off the ceiling. So you've got to have really good throttle management. Well, you don't have to. You'll develop really good throttle management over time flying inside, and you'll also learn that finer controls and how to quickly identify when you start to get out of shape and how to get back in shape. The more and more you fly. I was asked the other night, I'm droning on here a bit, but I was asked the other night about how much I fly, and I estimated that I fly 50 to 70 flights a week. Some weeks it's probably more, some weeks it's probably less, which gives me about 2.5 to 3 hours of actual flight time per week. So that gives you an idea what I do. And I don't do it because I'm training. I just do it because I'm fun. It relaxes me, especially when I'm not filming of anything. I'm just kind of putzing around down here in the basement when everybody else is asleep. It's just something I like to do every night. I tend to fly over lunch as well. And on the weekends, if I've got a little gap, I'll grab a couple batteries and head out back. So now we're down to the end of this and why I recommend the Mobula 7. And that is that its performance, its overall performance, indoor, outdoor, larger spaces, smaller spaces, I think it's much more conducive. It's a much more diverse machine. You can fly at 1S, you can fly at 2S, you can use two 1S batteries. You can modify, like Robert Thompson, he has got a host of 3D printed files just like this. This clips right into the tray down here. I believe he's also got another one for the tray that's up top, so you can clip this bottom tray out and then put one in there. I'll link down below to his design page on Thingiverse. Remember, tip your designers. So far, it seems like the tipping of designers has gone very poorly, and some of you might not like me pitching that, but I think Robert said his tip rate is less than 0.5%. Based upon the number of downloads. So we tend to take advantage of the people who design stuff, and the only way we're going to keep them designing stuff is to somehow show them some love, whether that's $1. I don't know what the minimum amount is, so you tell me what the minimum amount is, but I think if you download a file and you find it useful, maybe throw them 50 cents or $1 or something like that. I know that it was a big deal to Robert the first time he got a tip, so something to think about. But he's got a number of different things for a couple of different products. You can see him in the Beta FPV products. And getting back to this, this also is not without its faults. It's got a frame that doesn't necessarily hold together well. Now, I will say that I've seen a number of people on Facebook talking about crashing this and the frame not breaking. So, you know, I'm one guy, and so when I do my reviews, I can't necessarily dive deep into every scenario. What I try to do is bring it to your attention, and then you can decide if you're flying like I do in a space I do, that it's something that you shouldn't be surprised if it does break, because I broke it. Of course, I use Welder. There's a host of other things. Bondic has come up. JB Weld has come up. Basically, if you have something you use already to repair frames like this, you know, just use it and get back in the air and get back to having fun. Quick update about this. I am still using all the original components that it shipped with, and I still fly this one regularly. I do have 2 others that I'm doing some testing with. So this one isn't quite seeing the flight time that it once did, but this is one of the 2 original frames, and it's doing just fine. And one of the reasons why I find that these products are, well, one of the areas they have an edge in is this adjustable camera angle. It's just incredible. If you're a racer and you've got a giant space, you can probably crank it up more than I've got already, but you can crank the camera angle way up and you can just fly flat out. Or if you're just starting out, let me see if I can get this down. I always struggle with this part. There you go. If you're just starting out, you go flat. So this one is sold out a lot of different places. I know that a lot of the stateside shops are starting to pick this up. S&N Hobby, which is just across the border to the north of us, they're also selling this. Good Venture Drones. I think Pyroflip is getting some. I haven't heard if Get FPV is getting any or not. Race Day Quads, I believe, has already got some, or they're getting some. So we're seeing the popularity of these things move from being Banggood exclusives into these U.S.-based shops. I'm not uncertain about shops in other continents and countries. You'll have to just kind of poke around. What I suggest, if you are trying to get this, is just do some Google Foo, type in Mobula 7, maybe put a space between the Mobula and the 7, maybe not, and then just hit the shopping tab of the Google, see what you can find. People are buying these off of eBay. They're buying them various other places. Looks like I got another breakage there, didn't it? I need to put a little bit more welder maybe on the inside this time. But that's what I think. I think all these have a place in a pilot, that they'll have a great time and have so much fun with them they can't stand themselves. But there are also some specific scenarios that it may fit an individual better. So if you're just starting out, I would recommend 1S and smaller. If you're maybe a little bit more advanced, maybe the Tiny Hawk or one of the 2S ones. If you want whatever I think is the best, you go with the Mobula 7. I hope that helps you make some purchase decisions. I'll put links down below to the places I can find these things. I've said some of them verbally here in the video. I kind of dread doing this sort of video because I know that there's others coming out. I know the King Kong GT7 and GT8 are out. I don't have them yet. I really don't know if I'm going to review them. Basically because I don't think they're going to be doing anything better than we've already seen. I could be wrong, but from what I've seen of the specs, and I saw one video, I can't remember if it's the GT7 or GT8, it looked pretty modest. It didn't look very exciting. That could have just been the video I was watching itself, but I have a hard time feeling that they're going to beat these products because King Kong tends to not do anything dramatic. They tend to not take a whole lot of risk. They kind of iterate very small. If you look at some of their more recent products, like the ET series. This is the 100, the V2. Basically, this is just like the V1. They found a flight controller with an OSD on it, and they didn't wire it right, and they replaced the canopy. They're still using the same VTX. They're still using the same camera. They've got this weird bubble thing on the top. I don't like that, if you can't tell. These motors might be new, but it's the same frame. There's so many things about this the same. It kind of makes it feel like the same old product, and that's why I don't think the King Kong GT7 and GT8 are going to be revolutionary products. I think they're going to fall somewhere in the line, probably in here, maybe between the 1S and the 2S and the Tiny Hawk. I think that's where they might come in, but they're not going to have an adjustable camera. They're just not going to probably do anything revolutionary. If I happen to have one sent to me for free, I'll review it, but I'm not going to spend any money on those. I just don't see the purpose in that. There are some talks about Tiny Hawk 2 or Tiny Hawk Pro or something with the 2S version possibly coming out. I can't say I know anything about that. That's just rumors that I've heard. So whether you want to buy the 1S version now or wait and get the 2S version later, that's up to you, but I don't know how long you're going to wait. It may be a good long while. Who knows? It could be summertime before the 2S version comes out, if at all. It may never come out. We may see the Mobula Pro before that. I get that question a little bit too. When are we going to see the Mobula Pro, the next iteration? I don't really know. I know they're working on it, but I don't know when it's coming out. You know, things can take time, and they can have ebbs and flows to their supply, and the manufacturer has a market or a price they're shooting for, and if they can't get components to meet that price point, then they may wait to try to find a different component or a different supplier. So these things all change, they're very fluid, but for right now, that's what I think. If you want to ask me, just to recap, I think the best one is the Mobula 7, and then we covered all the others as to what kind of pilot and space you might have, what might fit you a little bit better. Hopefully I've answered all the questions, but if you do have comments, let me know in that section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.